Here at the Global Leadership Summit here in Neve Ilan, Central Israel. Beautiful place with Sarah Mali, who is the Vice President of Massa's Leadership Center. So thanks for taking time to talk.
Thanks for having me.
So I'd love to ask you, what is your approach to leadership education?
Wow, it's such a big question. I think there's probably three central principles that we're interested in kind of cultivating amongst our participants. One is leadership is a behavior. It's not a title. The minute you say that leadership is a behavior, leadership is an activity, that means leadership, anyone can exercise leadership. Ordinary people, everyday activities, anyone can mobilize people on issues that matter to them. So that's the first thing. Leadership's an activity, and the second thing is that it's available to everybody, which means that we're all stakeholders in each other's growth. And we are all either complicit in maintaining the problems that affect us or helping solve them. So that's a part of the kind of crippling effect of realizing that leadership is about you and you can exercise leadership. You realize that you can't blame. It's election day today.
Election day. It's
election
easy
day
to be like,
Israel.
Those are the people in office who are the leaders, and we're not.
So we'll blame them, and we want to topple them, and we'll moan about them, and everything like that. But effectively, we have responsibility for our own welfare and our own growth. And the third thing is, change requires loss, and that's a pretty big statement to make. That if we want to mobilize people on the things that matter, it means we're all going to have to work at how we distribute loss in a way that people can tolerate so that we can move people forward on the issues that matter. And that involves us as well. We're not going to, it's not, everybody else is going to lose something and we're going to stay, intact. No, everybody has a stake in this, and so do I, and I contribute to the mess, and I can also help make progress on the mess.
Right, okay. Awesome. So this approach, which much of course, comes out of the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard, is unique because you're not just doing it within the Jewish people, you're doing it within the state of Israel with unique populations. So how does it look different in that context? And what would you say you're trying to achieve in this?
Part of it is getting people out of their own narratives. This work has been applied to global companies, and it's not by chance, because global companies or multinational corporations need to be able to work in foreign cultures and different environments, and they need to use their empathy, they need to understand the stories they're telling themselves, they need to get out of their own stuckness. So as a global people, as a global enterprise, Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, we have kind of institutionalized stuckness, and we find it very difficult to cross boundaries. And so this work is really trying to get people out of the kinds of stories they tell themselves, get them out of that self-righteousness, which is not a good strategy when you're trying to mobilize people, so they can see with curiosity and empathy where other people are stuck and be compassionate to the losses that can ask them to give up in the pursuit of progress. So it's very Jewish. I mean, it's not by chance. Marty Linsky, Alexander Grasha, Ronald Heifetz, three Jews, men, we designed this stuff. I mean, thought this stuff up. There's something very, to me, very Jewish about being able to see the whole system, understanding that there are different parts, realizing that there's more. We're more than the sum of our parts, and having a systemic worldview is very helpful in the advancement of leadership.
Yeah, having studied some of this in grad school and in the Wexner Foundation, seeing you put it into place here so masterfully is really inspiring and awesome. And I think very few people are actually participating in this at large. I mean, you're reaching a huge number of people here, but you should continue to go from strength to strength in doing this important work.
Thank you.
Because I think the Jewish people are at really a turning point right now, a threshold. Here in Israel and globally of needing a new paradigm. And I think managing that loss and that change is really crucial.
I'll just say one thing about the institutional Jewish world, which we're struggling with as well, because we're Massa with the government of Israel, with the Jewish agency. So we're a global team brought together from around the world that teach this stuff, and we're teaching younger people, which I even kind of hesitate to call them younger, because we put them in that role and they have to be the younger and then we're the older. And part of this work is to say, how do we get people that are less senior and with less expertise in the system to come into the system and be able to make change in their current roles.
Right.
Not because they're going to be future philanthropists, not because they're going to be the CEOs, but in their roles, with the informal authority that they have, how can they mobilize systems? How can they, with what the resources that they have as people that can see vantage points that the establishment can't, how can they give that and see themselves as being resourceful in the Jewish communal world? And we haven't created enough spaces and places for that to happen. So this is also an invitation to be able to begin to see more about how we say that we're doing this for the Jewish future, and yet some of the patterns and the politics and the structures actually prevent younger people from taking ownership of what that future
That's
will
right.
look like.
So that work is on all ends. But I see in the younger generation such a disdain at times for establishments in a way that it can be destructive rather than disruptive. Actually engaging and realizing that these establishments in Jewish life can play a crucial role. And it even extends to them being anti-Israel in many senses, because that's the establishment. The illiteracy breeds contempt. Right, when someone doesn't know much, in certain cases, or is not engaged, doesn't have the skills to exercise leadership, then they can have contempt for the system. Or actually, the system has to survive; it just has to be disrupted at times.
Yeah, and I would say that younger people care a lot, and they know a lot.
Right.
They probably care a lot about different things than we care about.
That's right.
And they probably know a lot about things that we think we're literate and they're illiterate, and it will be useful binary for us to fall in. I actually think they know a lot more than we know.
The illiteracy breeds contempt goes both ways.
Yes, it goes both ways.
They're also afraid and angry at the younger generation. They're destroying the Jewish people, right?
And we're part of the mess, because we fall into some of these biases about the systemic stuff. Is that we can say that they are antagonistic towards us. Well, let's look inwards and say, this work, it's much like tshuva, right? Like, how are we perpetuating this problem, right? It's not just about everybody else. How are you and I, in the way that we, we have a benot shurut, right? Young people, year of service in our company, right? And I ask myself, how do I practice what I preach?
Right.
There's a young woman, she's a woman. This is her first role in Jewish communal service. How am I going to help her be resourceful and let her teach me? Right. And can I really learn from this experience? And it's tough, holding ourselves to task and putting ourselves on the hook for this stuff. We're accountable for a lot of this stuff.
I shared that idea last night, and some folks followed up with it, the notion that tikkun kahal is connected to tikkun atzmi, that repair of our community is also repair of self, this teshuvah, that actually it's deeply reflective, and the change has to happen looking inwards. Well,
once you're part of the system, there's no getting out of it.
Right.
We're all in it.
So check out Sarah's amazing work here at Masa and beyond, and remember that each of us has a role to exercise leadership in our own communities. Hard work, but we can do it together.
Thank you.